Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Bolton from The Hormone Mentor, and I help women that are going through the perimenopause to manage their symptoms naturally through food and lifestyle changes. Today I want to talk to you about the foods that you should be avoiding to help manage your hormones and balance them out during the perimenopausal years. Now, a few weeks ago I did talk about the foods that you should be adding more of into your diet, so do make sure you check out that video as well, because that would be really helpful to know about alongside this one, and I've linked it in the comments so that you can click on that and find it straight away. So do check that out, but make sure you watch this one first, because making sure that you are taking these foods out of your diet will help you to feel more energized. They will help you to have more focus. They'll help reduce weight. If you are struggling with weight gain, they will help with brain fog and all sorts of other things, because the kind of foods that I'm going to be talking about today are ones that are not necessarily giving you any benefit during the perimenopausal years, and they're things that if you reduce them or cut them out completely, you will see a real difference. So the first one I'm going to talk about is sugar. Now, sugar is something that is quite difficult to cut out, particularly if you are craving them, which we do a lot during the perimenopausal years. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that the more you eat, the more you want. So it is quite difficult to cut out, but it is something that will make you see a real difference. Now, when you are eating a lot of sugar, it can trigger hot flushes. It can make you gain weight. It can cause you to have quite foggy brain and lack of concentration, and it can also affect your sleep. So cutting it out can make a real difference. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you cut it out completely, but just cutting it back a hell of a lot can be really beneficial. And think about the things that you could replace it with. Could you replace it with honey or agave, or some coconut sugar or something like that? I don't recommend that you just switch those things out for sugar. Always think about cutting it back as well, but they are healthier alternatives that you can use as you are starting to cut back on sugar to think about. And there's so many recipes and things out there nowadays using those as an alternative to white refined sugar that it's very, very easy thing to do. And most of those things, like even coconut sugar nowadays, can be found in most of the major supermarkets. So do think about your sugar intake. What I would always recommend people doing is actually keeping a food diary. Awareness is really important when it comes to changing your diet. A lot of the time we kind of block out the things that we're doing and don't take ownership and responsibility for them. By writing them down, you can really see what you're doing, and also write down how you're feeling alongside it. Are you getting more hot flushes? Are you feeling quite foggy brained? Are you really tired? If you write down the symptoms, then maybe you'll see some level of a pattern in your food diary of the foods that are triggering those kinds of things for you. The second thing that I want to talk about is processed foods. Now, they really don't have any nutritional benefit at all, because most of them don't contain a very high level of nutrients. So obviously you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs from those kind of foods. They also contain a lot of sodium, which can make you retain water and feel quite bloated. And they also contain trans fats, which are not good for you at all, because they can raise your cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, and they can really make you feel quite rubbish and tired after you've had them. They don't have any nutritional benefits, so cutting out on those and thinking about eating fresh foods, thinking about whole foods and ingredients that are just one ingredient foods, not things that are put together in a package and stuck on the shelf in the supermarket. Now, I appreciate that when you choose those kind of things, it's either a craving or it's because you don't have a lot of time necessarily to cook. But there's a lot of things that you can do in a very short space of time, in less than 30 minutes, to cook a very nutritious meal. And if you are struggling with that, then do make sure that you get a copy of my hormone balancing recipe guide, because that'll give you some ideas of the kind of foods that you can be eating that'll be really beneficial for your hormones and to help you feel better. And I don't do complicated meals anyway. I like to spend as little time in the kitchen as possible, because I lead a busy life and I've got lots of things juggling, and I just don't have the time or the inclination. So do think about what kind of foods are you eating. Even if you make sure that you have a really good breakfast and a good lunch and a good dinner, that can make a big difference, because you're crowding out all of the other stuff. Even if your snacks take a little bit of time to get sorted, having those 3 balanced meals will really help. making sure that you have a good balance of protein, fat, carbohydrates, the complex kind, which really benefit you, actually helps to reduce cravings and reduce the need to snack. So it's all about that crowding out behaviour and really making changes for the long term. And the third thing that I want to talk about is caffeine. And I'm going to apologise for this because I know that it's going to be a difficult one for people. That we do get a little bit addicted to this one, and it's a social thing. You know, there's a coffee shop on every corner. We meet our friends for coffee. It's something that we savour and treat ourselves to and enjoy. But unfortunately, when it comes to our hormones, it's actually not very beneficial at all because it can trigger hot flushes. It affects your nervous system, can make it more difficult for you to sleep and get your circadian rhythm out of whack. It can make you feel quite foggy brained, and actually, although it gives you that initial boost, in the long term it can lead to, you know, quite severe fatigue. So cutting back on caffeine can be really beneficial for you. Now, I don't recommend that you just go cold turkey because that can cause headaches, it can cause cravings, it can make you feel really quite rubbish. Generally, just start off by alternating your caffeinated drinks with a glass of water so that you're gradually cutting back, so you're having less and less, and hopefully get to the point where you're only having one, maybe two maximum a day. And if it's the social aspect, when you go out, you like to have a caffeinated drink, do think about, you know, what the alternatives are. A lot of places nowadays offer things like rooibos as an alternative to tea. You can have herbal teas and all sorts of different things from the coffee shops nowadays. So look at the list, ask about the ingredients, maybe get a recommendation from one of the staff that have tried the different drinks, and just sample a few different ones and see what the difference is. Or if you really want to be having that coffee when you go out, make sure that's the only one that you have in a day, and do look at how much coffee is actually going into that drink, because most of the time it's not just one shot, it's two or three. So obviously you're getting a real hit, and not just having that one coffee a day, you're probably having three in one. So obviously do think about that. And again, think about the food diary, write down your drinks as well, see whether caffeine actually makes a difference. The only real way of finding out if these things are affecting your hormones is to cut back on them or cut them out completely and monitor how you feel afterwards. Now, it can take a couple of weeks to see a difference while your body is sort of getting rid of the effects of them and getting used to it. But I think you'll be surprised by how much of a difference you feel once you start to do it. Now, the fourth thing I want to talk about is spicy foods. Now, this is to do with hot flushes, because spicy foods, particularly in the evening, can mean that you trigger hot flushes and night sweats. So just be careful about the amount that you are putting in. They can be beneficial in lots of other ways because of the nutrients in them, but if hot flushes is one of your major problems, cutting back on spicy food can be, you know, a really great way to help reduce those. So do think about that. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is alcohol. Alcohol, again, triggers hot flashes. It affects your sleep. It can make you feel tired. It can cause weight gain, because not only are you taking in all of the calories and a lot of sugar through the alcohol, but you're also getting a little bit weak-willed when we've had a drink about the kind of things that we eat. We might make poorer food choices. So alcohol is something else to think about. Do just think about cutting right back on that, having, you know, just a couple of glasses a week. And again, monitor how you feel and how it's affecting you. So I hope that this video has been beneficial to you and that it's made you think a little bit about the kind of things that you're putting in your body and the foods that you are eating and how they might be affecting your hormonal symptoms. Do make sure that you check out the video about the foods that you should be putting in your diet, because I really hate to put a negative spin on things. I also like to think about, you know, what kind of food should we be eating? That's the thing to focus on the most, because when you're eating more of the good stuff, you're not necessarily eating as much of the bad stuff as well. So do think about that. But it is really important to be aware of the kind of foods you're putting in your body and how they are affecting you personally. So think about that food diary. Make sure you get a copy of my hormone balancing recipe guide, and click subscribe to this channel to let me know that you're enjoying the videos and get notifications when I do release another one. Take care, and I'll see you next week.